Hi. So I had some things happen to me so many years ago now, and I never really put them out there. I think I told a few people, but I just wanted to share my experience. And I think one of the things that really made me remember was I was watching a near-death experience by a lady called Anita who died of terminal cancer, and then she came back. Well, she had a near-death experience, and then she came back with the knowledge of how to make herself cancer-free, and she went from hours of death to cancer-free, and with all these experiences from the other side. And I've also been reading this book recently. Like, I really recommend it. It's probably mirrored here, but it's called The Camino by Shirley MacLaine, and I've only just gotten to sort of the last chapters. And I'm blown away because of how similar what she talks about is to many of the visions I experienced when I first started waking up. So I thought I will share them, but I really recommend this book. It's weird because it's all pretty good, but then you just get to the last chapter. I mean, somewhere around, not the last chapter, chapter 15, and it just really springboards for me. So if you've got the patience to sit through. So I had a sort of near-death experience. It wasn't really a near-death experience because I didn't nearly have to die to have it. I actually had it from a spiritual experience. I'll explain a bit more in a minute, but I didn't have an accident where I actually had a medical condition. But I had an experience very similar. Maybe some other people in the spiritual community have had this too. Maybe not everybody, those of us that are meditating a lot, I think we have more access to these things and, astral projection, because we don't need to kind of be forced out the body. We can allow ourselves, we're a lot more transient as it is. So yeah, I had my awakening, and my sort of initial twin flame activation at the end of 2010, but I think I didn't really become spiritual. Spiritual, what's spiritual? But you know what I mean? I didn't really kind of think outside of just regular things until about 2011, because I just remember this not being a normal experience. I knew nothing at that point about spirituality. I knew nothing about even soulmates. I really was a complete beginner. I was an artist, an arty child. I was an only child. I spent a lot of time on my own, sort of in reflection. So I wouldn't say that I was, and I did have an interest in what was going on, and I did have a few psychic experience when I was young, where I predicted things happening, like at a boat when I was a really young child. We were out in a little boat on the lake, just a little pond in a park, and I kept saying to my mum, the boat's gonna sink, the boat's gonna sink, the boat's gonna sink. And literally about 10 minutes later, water started coming in through the boat, and the boat sank, and my dad had to save me because I was really, really little, and I couldn't swim, and I probably would have drowned, but and my mum lost a shoe or something, and everyone was fine. But they were just dismissed experiences of, oh, it was a coincidence, things like that. So I never built upon any of that, and I would say I was definitely open-minded, but I didn't have any awareness of sort of spiritual practices. I think I'd heard of tarot, and that was kind of about it, and had a little bit of an interest because a friend in my year was really into like witch stuff and tarot, so it wasn't really from the spiritual side, but more from the pagan side. And that was it until 2010, 2011, when I had this sudden awakening. I was like, I've never experienced anything like this in my life. I have no idea how to handle this situation. I have no idea how I can ever let this go. I have no idea what to do. I don't know why I'm feeling this physical pull to this person from my sacral chakra, why I'm feeling other people's emotions that are not mine. I was so exhausted. I'd be like in bed for days. I had all kinds of like palpitations and shakes on my body and feelings I'd never experienced. And the story, I'm sure a lot of you have been through it. Obviously, I was having a Kundalini awakening that was very, in my case, drawn out. Some people seem to have them very, very quick. Mine took years to go through. And maybe we're always, rising on that. So I found this yoga center because I really just didn't know how to cope. I cried for about 6 months straight. I cried everywhere. I did not know what to do, how to get over this person, it was consuming. Anyone that's ever been through these, I have to remind myself, because it's been so long ago now and I don't have any pull at all or anything like that, that I have to remind myself that I wasn't just crazy and how bad it actually was at the time. It would literally feel like I was in a pressure cooker, and I just remember I'd cry and a ball on my floor. And I didn't seriously think about killing myself, but I did think there's no way I can live with this feeling. There's just no way I can live my life feeling this level of like pulling to somebody that is just running from me and ignoring me. And it was just all consuming. I'd honestly never known anything like it. And I'm sure anyone that's been on the journey had that dark night of the soul as well. And you're like a cabbage, really. All I did was I came home and I just wanted to lie on my bed. I didn't want to socialise. I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to lie on my bed and read. I found out about twin flames bizarrely quite early on when I was Googling what the hell is this? What am I experiencing? But remember in 2011, it wasn't really like it is now, where there's information everywhere and anyone in the spiritual community talks about it. Back then it was so almost embarrassing. It was, something that no one talks about. There was just a handful of blogs, and there was probably about 3 people teaching on it, and it was sort of like, it's just down to look. And then there was a lady called Leora, whose book really I still love today. Her little manual, it still makes so much sense with the polarities and the lion and the eagle. But yeah, I just literally wanted to cry on my bed and read about twin flames, and that was it. I didn't want to do anything else. It was so just in such a bad way. And then a friend told me about this yoga center, and it was called the Alchemy Center, and it was in Camden. And I started going to this yoga center, and they did not just yoga, they did meditation, they did sort of all types of healing. They did, I'm trying to remember some of them now, constellations, Metatronic healing, Reiki classes, Tantra. Not all Tantra is sexual Tantra. It was more just learning boundaries and things like that. Kundalini yoga, meditate, just everything really connected to alchemy. And it's still something that I would love to set up myself, because I've never found anything even similar to this since. And it had a cafe, so you'd just sit and chat with all the teachers and the other students, and you could go there. There was some people that literally they didn't have jobs, and they would go from like 9 in the morning until 10 p.m. every single day. And even for myself, because I was freelance, I'd just go do a job, get it out of the way, and then go spend as much time there as physically possible. We were really addicted to it, and at that time it was just a really healing place to be. And I never did, I had so many visions in the early stages of my awakening and so many crazy things. And I think people always assume I did plant medicine, but I actually didn't. And I think plant medicine has its little benefits. But I really didn't do any of that stuff. But I did have a very, very consistent practice back then, which I'll admit I don't have now. Because I would spend hours every day doing a mixture of yoga, meditation. I'd probably be doing 6 times a day, 5 or 6 times a week for hours. I'd be doing something that was mindful and going within, be it like a 1.5 hour on your back meditation session after an hour and a half's yoga, and that was nearly every day. And I think I was very, very in my upper chakras, probably a little bit too much, but, I think I needed that at that time to really see some of these things and prove at that time, beyond all reasonable doubt, that there's more to this earth plane than just your 3D reality and the material realm. But yeah, I was mostly raw vegan then as well. And I was so in my upper chakras, I just wouldn't really even be able to communicate with anybody. I was vibing really high. I'd either be vibing really, really high where I'd be radiating, or I'd be absolutely like purging and desperately unhappy. And I'd just be pining after this person the whole time that didn't want anything to do with me. And yeah, it was a really interesting experience, which I'm sure lots of people that watch these videos have had as well. I think maybe now people can work through stuff a lot quicker because there's so much more online, there's so much more help for this, there's so much more that we realise we're empowered and we can take control of this journey. But you've got to remember, back in 2011, I'm sure people can back me up on this, there really wasn't a lot. It mostly was sort of like, oh, you just have to wait for the runner to come back, or be unconditionally loving, i.e. like a doorman. It just always felt wrong to me, but I did still try it. I tried everything, But where was I? So I started going to this yoga center, and I was having crazy sort of visual experiences, and I was starting to channel a little bit at this point. But I couldn't do it on command. Like now I can kind of go and I can just ask, whereas back then it was just things occasionally would drop in. I won't go into all the experiences that I had, but the near death was, so I think I'd been going there for a few years. I think maybe this was 2012-ish. And I did my Reiki 1. I went on to do Reiki 2 and Masters, but not that I practice any real healing now, because I think really we all have to, the best thing is to facilitate people healing themselves. But everything has its place, like sometimes at the beginning we need to feel these things just to know they're real. And I think I really did that Reiki journey for myself anyway. But it was actually Reiki 1 that was the most powerful. The rest I didn't really feel that much, but Reiki 1, something really magical happened to me. So I was meditating, and I don't know, it must have gone really deep, and I just completely lost all sense of reality whatsoever. Like it just completely disappeared. And the next thing I knew, I was going up through this tunnel of light, and it was the most beautiful experience and loving energies I've ever felt. It was just absolute bliss and radiance, and the colours, I can't even describe them in human words. It was sort of like rainbows but sparkles, and I was just ascending up this sort of cloudy, rainbow, shimmering, amazing tunnel. And just my heart was like beaming open, and I just felt love like I'd never experienced in my life. And yeah, it was just incredible. And then I got to the top, and there was this massive area of cloud, and there was these 2 angels, and I was told, this is you and your twin flame. I don't know how that works, and I've had any more like really insights on that. And they were grey, silvery, like pewter colour, physical forms, and the wings are about 3 times the size of the body, so these huge wings. And then suddenly I had a thought in my mind, like I must have started coming back to reality in some way, and I could see my body in the yoga room. And this is where it kind of overlaps to a near-death experience, because I've gone out and I've seen all these things before and I've had visions, but I've never had this experience before. This is the only time in my life where I had the feeling where I could see my actual body from above, sat there, and I could see the whole room, I could see what everyone else was doing. And I started to panic, because I started to feel like I had a choice whether I went back or not, which I've never felt that before. But I started to feel, like I had this choice if I wanted to go back to my body or I wanted to just carry on. And I don't know, it never really became like a serious decision because I sort of knew I had to come back, but there was some kind of checkpoint there, some kind of choice. But I knew, and I was more worried about the other people in the room, weirdly, than whether I wanted to experience life or not. I kept just being like, oh my God, but what are they going to do when these people like just find my body there? And I just kept thinking that. And while I was just thinking and panicking about it, and you know, I'd started to be in my mind, I suddenly snapped back, and I felt the guy that did these Reiki sessions was very, very, very connected, and he was stroking my lower back when I came around, and he said, "Wow, you really went far out, hey." And I was like, "Yeah, I did." And I never asked him any more about it. I think it was just something that until recently I've never ever spoken about. I've never put it out there, I don't think, until recently when I started watching some near-death experiences, and I realised, you know, how similar that experience was. And maybe other people have had this too, where you didn't actually have to have a medical sort of emergency to have that experience of floating outside of your body and being able to see your body and the room and everything going on from above. I mean, I don't have really too much wisdom to share from it because I didn't have that experience where I got to really walk around or meet people on the other side or anything like this. I just saw these two pewter grey angels with these massive wings, and I was linked to them being my twin flame in some way, to me and my twin flame, or something along those lines. But yeah, I just felt drawn that I should sort of share some of my experiences. And sorry, this is probably going to be a really long video. I had loads and loads of others around that same time. After that, I would just constantly, I didn't have any more experiences where I could see myself like that. Maybe it's just astral projection. I'm not really sure. I've never really actively tried to do any of these things. All the kind of crazy things that have happened to me have just happened to me. But think really just the next day I then had some past life visions flash to me, and these are the ones that really remind me of this book. Because the first one I was shown, I'd done a yoga class and it all happened very, very quick. So I'd done yoga and I laid down in Shavasana and I felt like I was pushed into the earth by a massive force, and I was flashed all these visions of past lives very, very quick, like a movie. And I don't even know quite how I think past lives work, because I know time and space doesn't exist, so maybe they're happening simultaneously, or but they were sort of shown to me as past lives, and I didn't know anything at that time about sort of Atlantis or even anything to do with past lives really, but I was told these are past lives, and I was shown some things that I can't even really remember now, honestly. But one of the things that I was shown was two energy forms, and it was clearly me and my sort of divine counterpart, twin flame, but we didn't have bodies, we were just energy forms. We were like these streaks of energy where we had sort of a head energy and went out into a tail, and we were intercrossing with one another, and we were flying over the water and the land, and at all times connected, but not at the same time. There was always sort of that different, but they never separated. They were always like this, and they were just flying everywhere. And when I read this book, she says something similar, and it's the first time I've really heard someone else talk about that. So I thought, wow, you know, that's interesting that we had these same messages relayed. And then I went into Metatronic healing, and she said, oh, today we're going to do past lives. And I think I really needed that. And they used to have this projector with a movie on, and it was showing almost the same visions I'd had. And there was something to do with an elephant, which was also a life that I was shown. Something to do with elephants. I actually can't remember that one. It's this energy one that really stood out to me, but I felt like that was really confirmation that's what I'd seen. And then the other experience that I was just going to quickly share while I'm on, and maybe I have done this one before, but I really don't remember, was that then encouraged me to go and have a regression, because I'd never really heard of past lives before, and someone I was speaking to that time and, you know, bending their ear off about twin flames in my like most addicted phase, suggested somebody that she knew that did past life regressions with crystals and stuff like that. So I, sorry, do you know, I was in hospital actually like the last few days because I had a really, like an abscess removed that came up really quickly. So it's actually quite hard for me to sit down because it's on my left side. But I actually feel really good within myself actually. Even though that happened, I actually felt like it was sort of a good soul experience, if that makes sense. And a chance where I really went within and read some books. But yeah, so I had this past life regression with this guy called Jerry. And I first of all saw a library. I mean, now of course I know this to be the Akashic Records, but at the time I knew nothing. You have to remember, like, I was not from a spiritual background at all. This was just like really thrown at me at the beginning, with no discipline whatsoever or like understanding of what these things are. So obviously if these things happen to me now, I'd be like, oh, it's the Akashic Library, you know. But at that time I was literally just shown a library, and he said, oh, you know, is it the Akashic Library or whatever? And it had all these doors on it, and I could access different doors from the library. And the first one I saw, I can't remember exactly the order, but I was on this world where we were two gold people. We were pure gold, like alien looking beings, and the whole world was gold. So there was just a massive gold desert. There wasn't really, there was just this one gold bare tree. There wasn't really like vegetation, and we were just looking out, and it was very empty planet. I could only see us two, me and the person that I was with, for as far as I could see. I mean, I felt like I was shown a lot of twin flame things back then, of me and my divine counterpart having various experiences. And then I saw Atlantis, and I saw the temples, and I knew nothing about Atlantis. I'd just heard of the name Atlantis, and I was a priestess in these temples. And I had, at the time, I saw my father was probably poisoned. Like I said Zeus at the time because that was the only person that I knew that had the trident. So I just assumed it was Zeus. But they had a trident, a beard. And I didn't really see them. I just saw the vision that that was my father. And I was with this one other woman, and we were in this little temple thing. And in the center of the room were these, was a cutout into the sea and the ocean, and there was dolphins, and they would come up every day and you know, play with us and communicate with us. And that, I remember, they were my only friends that I had, because everyone had gone. There just weren't any people left. And I was aware that all the men were fighting in a war, and my partner at the time was fighting in this war. And he would come and see me every now and again on a horse, but then he'd have to like jet off again because he'd got to go and participate in some kind of war that he was fighting. But other than that, everywhere was very, very quiet. We were just inside this palladial looking temple, just me and this older woman and the dolphins, and that was it. And then the next thing I knew, water flooded in, and I remember these dolphins coming to save me. And then I don't really know what happened after that. I didn't really see, but I had some visions of Egypt after that, but I didn't actually see myself escape. I just saw the water come in. But the idea that I got from that was that there was a massive war going on, which I don't know if anyone's ever talks about that happening in Atlantis. I know they corrupted themselves with their own power and ended up having supposedly a natural disaster, but I definitely saw fighting, and I saw my partner going off to war there. And yeah, it'd be interesting if anyone's had visions from that period. And then I had some other things happen too, and then I had like a very personal vision of I saw a number 11, which I knew was my twin flame door. I couldn't get to it, and it was being guarded by a flaming lion, and that meant a lot to me at the time, because the person that I thought was my twin flame had like a massive connection there. Not going to go into like personal details on that one, but that was a huge sign for me. And even at that time I was like, so does that mean he's blocking me from seeing my, like, you know, who my twin flame is? Because he was sort of like guarding the white door with the gold number 11 on. And I think in my case that turned out to be very true, that he was sort of such a strong karmic lesson that he was blocking any ability or capacity to reach my twin flame, you know, until I'd sort of slain the dragon, slain the lion, so to speak. But yeah, they were my some of my early experiences in past life visions and a near-death experience. And yeah, a lot of them are just, the lady is such a better writer than me, and she sort of really explains how I've kind of put them all together now. It took me a long time to put them together and kind of bring some sense to them. And because I've also seen a lot of visions around the Pleiades, I've seen myself living in the Pleiades, I've seen a lot of confirmation around being Palladian and being in the Pleiades. And you know, I think there are people here that are coming in. You know, I really believe that at different points in time over our world, we've had extraterrestrials and beings from other planets. You know, I don't believe that humans are the only beings to exist out there, and that they've come and helped humanity at various points to progress their growth forwards. And I think that's when we've had massive shifts in consciousness. And this lady says something very similar in her book, which I think was what inspired me to jump on and just make a video about it. And that we've had these massive leaps when we've had help from other star seeds and other races that are also continuing their evolution across time and space. And one of those was around Atlantean times and Egyptian times, and then also why there's such a gap between apes and humans, because that was a time when extraterrestrials came and really pushed forward progress of humans at a rate that we wouldn't have achieved on our own. So that's always been recently kind of how I've been linking things up as well. So yeah, anyway, this woman, I'm not as good, anything like as good at explaining as this lady is. So like, if you're interested in that journey, I really recommend this book actually. And I'd be interested if it aligns with thoughts that you've had on the experience. It talks a little bit about how we're all one, but how we all, you know, have our divine counterpart and our match, and how we're creating our reality, but we're also always connected to source. And she just does a really good job of explaining it. So I don't know if anyone's read that book. Let me know if you have, what you think of it. And yeah, I hope this wasn't too waffling and boring. And yeah, have a great evening.